Okay, it is 5:30, so I will call our first meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We will need a motion to approve the June 26, 2023 Budget Board Meeting agenda as presented.
So moved. Support.
All in favor, or any discussion by first? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, show of hands, please.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. First up, final amendment budget. Mary?
So the first packet under the agenda is the composite, and this is just all of the funds. The amended 22-23, the proposed 23-24, and this is the document that goes on our website for the transparency requirement. Okay. Right, so our general appropriations final budget amendment, we have $11,232,518 in local, $37,030,737 in state, $6,666,566 in federal, and then other financing sources, which this is the indirect cost from food service being transferred into general fund for $139,000. It gives us a total revenue for this year of $55,068,821. We have a current fund balance of $11,550,774. So we have available to appropriate $66,619,595. This fund balance is the total fund balance, so it's the restricted, the unspendable, everything all together. So of that $66 million, we will appropriate $55,436 for expenditures this year. And the basic programs, which are the elementary schools, the middle school, the high school, summer school. We have $20,371,678. Added needs are special ed and CTE programs, $8,666,860. And then support services, pupil support, $3,123,599. Instructional staff support, which is, this is where all of our PD and stuff runs through. $2,418,379. General administration is Dave's office and the board, $613,388. School administration is our principals and graduation. It's $3,564,889. Business services are the business office, and then like the postage and taxes that are charged back to this year, things like that, property taxes, I mean. $709,483. Operations and maintenance is $5,054,578. Transportation is $2,815,261. Central support, this is a big portion of it is PD for our non-instructional staff and for our administration, and there's several other things rolled into there. $2,782,428. Other is athletics, $831,336. Community services, $486,649. Community services includes like welfare activities through McKinney-Vento, different things like that. Other financing and uses, $3,561,908. This includes all of our long-term debt, our construction that is not bond funded, our indirect costs that we draw from the grants, and our indirect costs from food service, or that goes into revenue, sorry. On the food service one, you'll see that. And a couple other things. So total appropriate is $55,436. When I talk about the function codes, when I'm saying basic education and stuff like that, those are all explained in that PowerPoint that I had, that Dave had sent out, that I presented a couple years ago. So if you haven't viewed that, it's really helpful. You know, it has a lot of information in it. So for food service, our local incoming revenue was $690,462. So local revenue in the food service is like the a la carte stuff that the kids buy and things like that that aren't, and catering income. State is $107,223. This is a transfer of at-risk funds that are required by state law because we have to take a certain amount of our at-risk funding and transfer it to food service to help cover breakfast costs for students in need. And it's also some small grants that we get from the state for food service. Federal is the big one because it's basically a federally funded program. So this is all the money from the free and reduced lunches, $1,990,984, and then other financing sources is $9,000. So total revenue of the other financing sources is from incoming revenue from Pied Piper because we man their food service for them and bill AMA for it. So total revenue is $2,797,669. Our fund balance as of July 1 was $869,538. Total available to appropriate is $3,667,207. I know I mentioned earlier in the year that we had received a food service grant for equipment. The state did make a mistake, and they had to pull that back from I don't know how many districts. It was apparently a glitch in the system. Luckily, we just had our stove on order. We didn't, we hadn't ordered any of the other stuff yet in the grant, so we got lucky. And I feel very sorry for some of those schools where they're running a razor thin in the state. They had already spent that money, and then the state pulls it back. It was a shame. So in the food service, our expenditures, we have operations and maintenance in there. You'll notice that. So our food service truck that goes from school to school also does the mail delivery. So we're only allowed to charge a certain percentage of it to food service to cover the delivery of the food. The other portion of it has to go to general fund. So that's why that little bit of money's in there, $4,203. Other central support is $2,653,645. That's just basically all the expenditures for food service. And then again, we see the $139,000. So this is an expense to food service and a revenue to general fund. That's why you see it in the two different places. So $2,796,848 is being appropriated for food service to close out this school year. Long-range maintenance. Other financing sources was new incoming revenue, $230,578. We had a fund balance of $858,320. This leaves available to appropriate $1,088,898. And we will appropriate this year $547,553 of that. You'll see the operations, so this is services that our maintenance department has supplied to the district, like work that we set aside money for them to do. Then you'll see under transportation, those are the new buses that are on order. I seriously doubt they're going to get here before June 30th, so that's going to be a big difference in this budget. Because those expenses will have to be transferred to next year, and this 242 will become part of the fund equity. And then the 75,000 is money that was set aside to help pay for the roof here at central office. So we have appropriated $547,553 for long-range maintenance. Long-range technology, we had new incoming revenue of $30,574. That is the E-rate money. E-rate's a federal program that you apply for technology equipment with, and they pay a certain percentage of it. This past year they paid 80%, the district has to pay 20%. So this is them reimbursing us for the 80%. Other financing sources were $226,833, total revenue of $257,407. Our fund balance at July 1 was $120,741. Available to appropriate $378,148. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go too fast. So we are appropriating that in central support services in the amount of $278,536. So our first series of our bond project, we have new incoming revenue of $108,817. That's interest. Our fund balance was $5,915,958, and we have available to appropriate $6,024,765. We are appropriating $5,484,285 of that. $250 is for business services. That's the fees that the bank charges us. Operation and maintenance is $21,628. We have bought some components for the doors, the card readers on the doors that are being installed, because we got a better price on them and things like that. Building improvements, which of course is the other vendors that we're paying to remodel the buildings and stuff, $5,462,407. So that leaves us back to the total appropriated. The energy bond, we had new incoming revenue of $4,906. Fund balance was $284,112. That leaves us $289,018 to appropriate. And we are appropriating $263,650 of that. Again, building and site improvements, that basically where all of that will fall until this last little bit that we have to spend, and that will probably be mostly our team that's doing that, so that would fall under operations. Series 2 of the bond. We have new incoming revenue of $529,050. That is all interest. So fund balance at the end of this year will be approximately $16,061,094. So we have available to appropriate $16,590,144. To close out this year, we are appropriating it $533,500 for operation and maintenance. And again, those are things that our team has purchased to take care of and help move things along. And then building and site improvements are $3,537,508 for a total of $4,071,008. Student activities. This one changed a little bit because we had some incoming revenue for scholarships at the last minute that we had to make sure they were in there. So we have New incoming local revenue of $408,659. Fund balance of $392,502. So we have available to appropriate $801,161. And we are planning on expenditures this year of $592,050. That is that for the resolution. Following are your reports out of our software. Just show you what they look
Sorry, I thought I
like.
turned it off earlier. I'm surprised.
We do line dance. So these are just the reports that are pulled from our accounting system. I see those. They match up with everything that's in the resolution, other than you're not going to see the fund balance on there. The fund balance is a magic background kind of thing. It's in the system, but it doesn't show up because it's not a budgeted amount. Put it that way. Everybody good with this year?
I think so.
Okay.
How long after July 1st are we still getting bills, or still getting refunds, or still getting?
We're required to record July and August, up to 60 days, but we sometimes get them in September, and we try to get them in the appropriate year, but it just depends on how late in September and how close the cutoff is. But July and August, we're still recording expenditures for this year.
This year.
We still have the rest of the teachers' pay for their summer pay.
Right.
So the way the teachers work is their first payroll for the school year starts the first payroll in September and runs through the end of August, so that way their pay is spread out. So the pay that they're getting in July and August, they earn during the school year.
Right.
We just take their salary and spread it out over that time period. So those 2 months all have to be accrued back to this year, along with the retirement, the FICA, and everything else that goes with it.
I did think of a question. The resolution we're just looking at, should that be Amendment 2 or 3?
2.
That's Amendment 2. And then we're approving Budget Amendment number 3 in the next meeting?
Do we,
Maybe the 3 should be 2.
the 3 should be 2 in the approval, yeah.
Okay, so in the next meeting,
We only, we only,
Instead of 3, it'll be 2.
It'll be 2, okay.
It'll be 2.
I was just trying to reconcile those two in my mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
are we ready for 23, 24
Yes.
now? I am. Okay. So our general appropriations budget resolution for 22, or 23, 24. We expect new incoming local revenue of $10,889,034. This are just educated, practiced numbers, because we look at what we've on average received and what we really expect to continue, and kind of make a guess as far as that goes. State is $36,389,139. This number will change. I have based the 23-24 budget on 20 less students and an increase in per pupil foundation allowance of $458. I just kind of took the middle of the road with that. Dave and I talked about it, and we figured we didn't really lose students last year, and we budgeted 20 down last year. We're doing the same thing again this year. At this point in time, I talked to Angie, we're one ahead. So, and we haven't had kindergarten registration yet. The kids, the people that come in at the last minute that haven't registered their students yet, because they forget, oh my goodness, my baby's supposed to start school. So we should be pretty good, really. The state has not released their budget, so I'm just kind of taking the middle of the road with everything. I didn't increase any 31A funding or anything like that. I just kind of went with status quo until I find out for sure. I'm a very conservative budgeter. I just feel it's in the best interest of the district to not, over-assume. So, under federal, for $4,498,067. This is declining, you'll notice, because, the ESSER funds are running out and those grants have run their term. So we have just ESSER 3 left and then our regular federal grants left for this next year. Other financing sources is, again, the transfer from food service. I put that back down to the 80,000 just to be on the safe side instead of having it up at the 139 because I'm not sure what our revenue is going to be. So we'll start out with that, and if I can move it up a little bit more, I probably will. Total revenue is $856,240. Fund balance the beginning of July was $1,619,159. This is our estimate from this closing out this current year. Available to appropriate $63,475,399. We will appropriate $51,737,762. Basic programs are $19,744,000. Added needs are $8,157,871. Pupil supports are $3,473,878. Instructional support staff is $2,135,534. General administration is $591,451. There was a lot of legal cost in this year's budget. I kind of knocked that back in hopes that we won't have to use our lawyers so much this next year. General school administration is $3,440,427. Business services $600,349. Operations and maintenance $5,087,688. Transportation $2,629,144. Central support $2,437,606. Other $895,060. The other is the athletics, if you'll remember. $488,416 for community services, and then other financing uses $2,100,294. We move on to food service. We have projected local income of $683,262, state income of $107,223, federal income of $1,972,214, and other financing sources of $9,000. There again, you'll see Pied Piper. Total revenue $2,771,699. Fund balance on July 1, $870,357. Total available to appropriate $3,642,056. So we are appropriating in the following: $2,681,801, and then the $80,000 is a transfer to general fund. These are just preliminary numbers. They'll change. All of these will change over the year. Long-range maintenance, we have transferred from general fund to $307,300. Fund balance was $451,345, so the available to appropriate is $848,645. We will appropriate exactly that amount. Operations is $340,000. Transportation is $120,000. It's set aside for a bus. And then other financing uses is $388,645. Long-range technology, we're projecting $106,648 for local revenue. Again, that's the E-rate revenue, so it's what they've allowed us to purchase at 80% again, and we're funding 20% of it. So what that does is replace our Wi-Fi connections, our servers, all different things like that that are the base for technology. Other financing sources is $150,000. That's a transfer from general fund. It's to help build up the fund for new Chromebooks and other needs that we might have if we have to buy a new copy machine or something like that along the road. Fund balance was 99,612. Available to appropriate was 356,260, and we will appropriate that full amount. The first series of the bond, we're expecting maybe $6,000 in new incoming revenue. Fund balance is $540,489. We will appropriate that whole amount. $250 for business, again, that's the bank fees. And then other financing or other uses is the construction costs. The energy bond, we may see $100 in interest. We have a fund balance as of July 1 of $25,368, and that leaves us $25,468 left to appropriate. We will appropriate that full amount. I fully expect to expend that in this year and get that closed out. I'm sure that Kurt's going to find some energy-related expenditures somewhere along the line that we can close that out. The second series of the bond, local revenue estimate, $90,000. Very conservative estimate of the way the interest rates are going right now. Fund balance is $12,519,136. That leaves us with $12,609,136 to appropriate, and we will appropriate that full amount. Student activity funds. Possible new incoming revenue of $111,702. Our fund balance as of July 1 was $209,111. Available to appropriate $320,813. We will appropriate $309,280. So I purposely did this so that you could see that new incoming revenue of the 11,000, whatever it was, 11,135, so that you could see the change that I made to account for that revenue in this year and the effect that it has on the fund equity. So, and then again, these are the reports out of our accounting program for the 23-24. Any questions?
Any questions for Mary?
AJ, seriously, you can come see me anytime,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, thank you for the report last week, and then I know you opened up your email for any questions, so it is always a lot of information, so.
Yeah. And it's seriously, anybody, my door's open, just call me and let me know you're gonna come in, so I will be there. And I'm happy to answer any questions, okay?
Thanks,
All
Mary.
right, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Do we have any citizen comments regarding the budget? Okay. Anything further from the board with this? We good? Okay. Well, that concludes the budget hearing meeting, and we can officially adjourn that first meeting. And once Leslie gives me the look that she's ready, we'll move on.
I'm ready.
Okay. Regular meeting. I will call the meeting to order at 5:58 and ask everyone to once again stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reviewing the consent agenda items, which are all in your packet. Just give everyone a couple minutes to peek through those, and we'll move on. Okay. Let's move on to approving the meeting agenda. We'll need a motion to approve the June 26, 2023 regular board meeting agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you. Next up, benchmark assessment update.
Lee, can you get those TVs? Thank you.
I guess I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the last time we tried to use these projectors and they didn't work, it came down to a cord not being
did.
pushed in all the way.
It's deceiving, that little light blinks down there, whether it's in or not.
Yeah, so, inside joke, I think the playing field's leveled a little bit. Anyway, so I'm doing my best Megan Goff here impersonation tonight. She had a previously scheduled vacation day, so we want to make sure our team takes advantage of those days. So this is a requirement that came from PA 48 of 2021. It was renewed for 23. Section 98B, and if my memory serves me, we received about $156,000 for this particular funding. And part of those requirements are to report on benchmark assessment. The idea is being able to track and report student progress throughout the year. So the update is intended to inform the board about the district's progress towards achieving benchmark assessment goals that were identified in September of should be 2022. And we're reporting on that for 23 right now. And then just looking at our background information, the MTSS system, you want this upside down or right side up pyramid with universal core instruction going to 80% of the students. A targeted smaller group receives 15% receive that small group intervention, and then the intensive individualized intervention should be about 5% of your student body. We're typically, in education in general, since COVID, that's kind of inverted, where we're seeing intense intervention provided to a much larger group and scaling it down. But these benchmark goals were set with these percentages as a target. And this PA 40 says that the administrators, the teachers will come together and discuss and set those goals at the beginning of each year based on the data that they do have available. So kindergarten, Acadience is the system we use for early literacy assessment. Our goal statement was 70% of the students will meet the end of the year benchmark in early literacy skills. And so that'd be phenom segmentation fluency and nonsense word fluency. And phoneme segmentation is being able to see chunks of words and sound them out. It's a foundational skill in reading. And then nonsense word is the same kind of thing where you see the sounds, but the words don't have any meaning. It is, if you're able to look at, I can't think of any examples, but it's not a real word, but it has different chunks of blends and things like that. And you can see that and kind of sound that word out. That skill, you can't actually guess the word if you know what the word means, because it's not an actual word. Those are two foundational skills needed for later success in reading. So our goal was 70% would meet the year-end benchmark, and 60% of the students met the benchmark this year. So 82%, 60% of the students met the benchmark. So 82% met the benchmark for phoneme segmentation, and 59% met it for the nonsense word fluency. just looking back at this goal last year, the 82% is an improvement and the 59% is a decrease from where we were this time last year. And that's kindergarten as well. So first grade, same, you have nonsense word and oral reading fluency. The goal was that 70% of the students would meet the end of the year benchmark in literacy, and 58% of the students did. So a significant gap there. This breaks it down by schools, and essentially green is good, yellow is caution, and red is concern. So if you just kind of look at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and the end of the year, the good news here is that that green body at Besser increases, and then it kind of up and down at the first grade. And I'll make this will be posted on our transparency site, and you can share it with you to go through it. We have this listed out for each school. Again, when you're looking at the overall goals, we didn't hit them, so in here you'll see those finer details there. And that's a message that I'll speak to. Essentially our data is not good, and we are working on ways to respond to that. And then step aside right now, one of the big parts is this is all local data, which is typically more informative and time sensitive. We're still waiting for the state data, the MSTEP data. Once we have that, obviously we can connect what we're seeing locally to those state, and it just gives us a fuller picture. So as we go into next year, we hope to have all of the data. Again, MSTEP typically comes out way too late, but we're hopeful that they can get it to us in a meaningful time frame. With that said, I don't mean to fly through these next ones, but it does just break it down by each of the schools. And it's kindergarten on top and first grade on the bottom there. Sorry, so that was Ella White, Hinks here. Lincoln. Sanborn. And Wilson.
Dave, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
They're all using the same material. So is it students or is it the teacher for the variations?
I couldn't give you one answer, and that's what's done at each of the buildings. I mean, they have their own data teams that go through and look at this, and they identify possible causes and things like that. Kind of looking at it across the district level, we've kind of operated on the premise that socioeconomic status had a lot to do with it. You'll see some slides later on NWEA data where that may not be the case. So it's very hard for me to say, here's what caused it.
Just
but
a
that's
huge
what we
swing.
It is.
What I think is interesting though too is if you like some of the small schools have really big swings because if you have
There's only
like
a
one
couple.
kid who makes great growth, that percentage is so much greater than a school like Besser or Ella White where you've got so many kids taking the test, and if one kid makes a great improvement, it doesn't change your numbers. It's interesting to see compare some of the larger populations versus the smaller and.
Yeah, so like Lincoln in kindergarten had 29 students versus Wilson, 32, about 40 students. That's not correct. I said that wrong. And it's 10, 7, and 12 for kindergarten. Nope, that'd be about right. And then almost twice as many students, 30. In the end of the year, 36, 40. So, our teams at the classroom level, at the building level, look into that data to see, what is that cause. But at a district level, we need to better understand it as well.
And just, to AJ, just hang on. To AJ's point, we've looked at the data, earlier, and you're right, the smaller schools seem to do better. Wilson's always seems to be kind of an outstanding performer. Socioeconomic, as you said, doesn't necessarily always equate to lower scores, as we're seeing. So basically then it comes down to either the teacher or the student population. So not that I would appoint blame at any one person, but is that something that the schools individually look at the teacher in that particular classroom and how the trends work within those schools? Kind of like a grade report for the teacher, if you will.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So at the end of this year, we sat down, they looked, so building principals looked at all of their teachers, compared the performance, how that laid out, and then had conversations with those teachers. What are you doing right? What's not working, to kind of narrow it down to, who are our exemplar teachers, and then model that and share what they're doing with others.
And to the opposite end of that spectrum, if perhaps they're not a stellar performing teacher, is there, obviously you're making every method to try to improve that, but if we don't see improvements in those areas, is that something that is addressed on a regular basis?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, it's in a variety of ways. It comes down to, what that particular teacher needs. And sometimes it's just not the right fit. Maybe the grade level, the age of the student, and isn't the right fit. But we'll bring in teachers or let them go sit in with teachers and watch what's being done. They've got mentors in many cases, where they sit down and kind of go through the process and see what's working and what's not. The evaluation process is part of that, where they receive feedback on, those observed lessons by the administrator, and then, respond to that. And then each building, again, has an MTS, that's not the right, a data team that looks at it and kind of shares best practices, helps those that are struggling.
Thank you.
And I hope to be able to, I am not speaking ill of the previous superintendent, but there was a big push at that point to go to competencies and project-based learning, and kind of move away from, hard NWA data and tests like this. I fully believe in competency-based learning, but I think this is giving us a picture of those skills that are, they're really highlighted here, those skills and foundational abilities. And I think we're kind of shifting the district back towards really looking at the data with a fine-tooth comb, really matching it with the skills to build up to that competency. When you go to competency-based learning, it takes a certain level of skill and ability to be successful in competency-based learning. We got to get down to that foundational level and make sure everyone's got those skills to then start being able to talk about competency-based learning and things like that. So somewhat of a shift in philosophy, and then you throw in COVID and remote learning and everything in between all of that. So for me, we're getting back to using this data, with the teachers, talking about the students in particular, looking at their data and making the appropriate adjustments in, not only teacher practices, but making sure that we're staying up on whether students are showing growth or not.
So would it be, based on your comment, fair to expect maybe a less emphasis and sort of a less of a push towards project-based learning at the junior high and high school level as well?
Well, I think we've already modified, it was a mandatory for all 8th graders. We've put that into, it's a choice to go into
Yes.
that. And to go into that, we do sort of a criteria, do we feel that you'll be successful in that?
Mm-hmm.
I believe in project-based learning. I think it can be highly effective, but we've also got to get some data points here outside of project-based learning that say we're improving.
Yeah, okay. Well, just to go on record, I'm not a believer in project-based learning. I feel like it was a kind of a strange experiment that but we can get into that later. I'm glad you got some confidence in it. You know, I don't have that level of expertise, just what I had heard and was seeing, it did not seem like a great thing. The comment about moving teachers around, though, I think is very apt. I just heard somebody say this week, somebody told me, if you have a plant that's not doing well, move it. Put it in a different light or a different part of the house, and that seems like a very good idea, because I'm sure there are teachers, I know that's true of me in music. I'm not effective equally at all grade levels.
Yeah.
So that seems like a good idea. And my third sort of question then is, would we expect maybe to see some improvement with the new ELA curriculum? Is that kind of, was that, did we have this data when we were looking at that, or maybe thinking ahead how that might help?
Yeah, so we had, this is 2 years in the making, this benchmark assessment. So I think we said the ELA curriculum was adopted in 2015 or 16 originally.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of missed your question, but did this inform our decisions? To some degree. Yeah. We need to change things. This was one piece. It only came along really last year. Other data, teacher experience, student experience, and weighing in on that led to that decision too. And the fact that it's, an aged curriculum.
So, well, I guess my question really was, do we expect then, do we have high hopes that the new curriculum will help some of these people who are falling through the cracks?
Yep, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about that, I think, at the last workshop. There's always an implementation dip as the cohorts learn how to use the new curriculum, how to teach it and those sort of things. So I would not expect an immediate rise in performance. But the most important point is that we build a system of, we're going to check in here, so that we aren't 8 years down the road wondering how it's doing. But I would expect there'll be a little bit of a drop-off, and then as teachers and students get more accustomed to it and proficient at it, we should start seeing, and I'm hopeful, and I expect, that we'll see an increase.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a sense that beginning teachers are struggling with this, or being less successful than veterans who've been at the same grade level year after year? Because we throw an awful lot at a brand-new teacher.
Yep.
Not we deliberately, but there's a whole lot that they need to do that they haven't experienced either at student teaching or in their classes or observations that they've done. And first-year teachers are going to struggle, and they're not as likely to have as wonderful successes as the veterans.
Yep.
And I wouldn't want to just keep moving them around so they haven't had a chance to be at one grade level for more than a year before we move them to something else, because that's not fair either.
Yep. And that really is the principal knowing their staff,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
excuse me, the principal knowing his or her staff, not their staff. I'm learning. Again, I don't want to say that all new teachers are struggling, all
No,
veteran teachers
I'm
are
not saying
excelling
that
and all of that. It really is a mixed bag.
Right.
We have some rock stars at all phases of their career. Our job is to figure out how to leverage those rock stars to help those that are struggling. And, so moving is one option, pairing up is one option, changing mentors if it's not working out, professional development. There's all sorts of tools that we have available to hopefully make everyone as successful as we can. But
And our instructional coaches should certainly be in part of that.
I think if you talk to
Part of that
anyone,
team.
our instructional coaches are, highly regarded, seen as very valuable, effective. If we could get about 15, 20 more of them, I think that even broaden the scope of our improvements there. But Becky Meyer is moving to assistant principal, so that's a good thing because she'll have, an impact on the entire building there. But we're now losing an instructional coach that was highly valued.
So do each of our, do our teachers have a mentor program, the first-year teachers, and they have, because,
Yep.
I've done that before in my past career.
Yeah.
Is being a mentor for incoming teachers, and we do have a program like that?
Yeah, we do. And
Okay.
Lisa, you're here. Is it 3 years that they're required by law to have a mentor? And then
Okay.
if we have mentors available, we can continue. But,
Mm-hmm.
boy, I think a lot of our mentors are mentoring multiple teachers because You know, we're turning over our teaching staff and, you know, years of service-wise, and, you know, getting people to step up when there's a lot going on in the classroom to help others is just a challenge, but yeah. Yep, they have a mentor system. And then Megan Black really took that over. She's been over it since I've gotten here. I don't know how long prior to that she was involved, but it's gotten much better, you know, just in the couple of years I've been here. Again, the reviews of that and what she's done to work on that program to make it effective have been very strong.
I will also be interested in knowing the teachers at Wilson in Sanborn that have had such success. Now, I know that their classes are smaller than at Besser and Lincoln, but maybe they could share some of their insights of why they've been so, you know, with the phonemic awareness and the all that they what have they done differently that the teachers at maybe Lincoln and Besser could benefit from.
Yep, and there has been a lot of visits to the other buildings, to Sanborn in particular. They might have gone this year, but they went last year, and it was Besser and I think Wilson both went over. The other schools may have, but I've heard this story over and over, that when they got there, they were surprised that Sanborn couldn't tell them what it was that they were doing. Their data is excelling. You know, it wasn't like, I don't know, it's we do this, we do that. They watched them teach, and there weren't any like, oh, that's significantly different, or we weren't doing that.
Okay.
There's culture of a building has a big part to do with it. Self-efficacy has a big part to do with it. So we're trying to figure out how do you replicate that, and why isn't it? Because all the cultures are really strong, but you're just seeing different results. But so yes.
It's just a suggestion, you know.
Yep. Yeah, so there's a lot of pairing within the building, going and observing, and then also staff have gone to other buildings.
Okay.
And we'll continue to do that too.
Thank you.
I know when we have field trips, predominantly these grades right here, and some teachers you think, oh yes, I love this. Some it's like, oh man, this is twice as hard as what it should be. You know, just a different style.
You're talking from the behavior management
Behavior management,
perspective.
the engagement of the teacher.
Yeah.
We had one this spring. I didn't know who the teacher was. It's like, and I knew the IA of for the classroom. You would have thought she was the teacher. Teacher never said a word.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah. And you've been in the classrooms, and I would bet that as you go through the classrooms, you can pick up on that pretty quickly. And so again, we see it, and we do what we can to respond. And behavior management's a great example. It's probably because it's the most immediate thing you can see and get a feel for, a sense for. And so sometimes it's just not the right age group. You know, I went from 5th grade. I think it's easier, in my opinion, it's easier to go up in grades rather than down in grades. Because boy, when I don't know what to do with the little kindergartners and things like that. But the point being, you know, 5th grade turned out to be the right age group for me. And, you know, if you're in the wrong age group and you don't know how, or you're just not fit for it, it can be very evident.
I don't know how to ask this with it being really clear, but do we ever track which buildings allow or disallow teacher requests? I always wonder if that like impacts success within
It's an
classes,
interesting question.
because if we know, you know, teacher A at Besser is phenomenal, and so the parents that know to request or really are, you know, looking out for the best interest of their kids, they all request, and does that inflate how well that teacher does, and then you get another classroom in that same building where those kids are, right, like, maybe
Yep.
the parents aren't as engaged, and they're not helping them, and they're not supporting them, and so then those test scores look worse. But I just wonder if you compare a school that says, well, we don't do teacher requests, and so those kids are more equally spread out. Like, I just wonder if that, in the big picture, if that is impacting success and learning in classrooms.
So I would say it certainly does. We don't track it, but absolutely, it makes sense if requests are fulfilled, and we're experiencing that even with the buildings as people are choosing to transfer to different buildings for those kind of reasons too. To my knowledge, we haven't tracked and associated, but it certainly makes sense that it would. All right. So one of the requirements that came in this year for this was we had to break all the data down by subgroups. And so the middle of the year cut point for kindergarten was 119 in Acadians and 155 in first grade. And so all we've done here is broken down by all is blue, male is red, that yellowish is female, green is special ed. I guess that'd be like an orange is non-special ed. And then light blue is economically disadvantaged, and even lighter blue is non-economically disadvantaged. And so with something like this, we look for who is this group, and that's special ed in kindergarten, and it's significantly below the others. Same with, interestingly, special ed in first grade is significantly higher than the others. And this is a district-wide view too. My guess is that, again, the numbers of special ed students in kindergarten is smaller than the number is first grade, because we want time to move through before we truly identify students. So that was reading ELA. So then this is math, grades second, that was kindergarten first. This is grades 2 through 8 reading, and it uses the NWEA MAP data.
And MAP is measures of academic progress.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with geography.
So goal statement, 70% of students will achieve a score of average or above. That's the 50th percentile, and there's lots of details in those numbers. But looking at the top, so if 70% is the mark, we did not hit it, at any of those grades. And then just interestingly, it's not an excuse, but interestingly, these numbers down here show the number of students that were flagged as rapid guessing on the test. This is a computer-based test, and they could just click and answer, and then it can invalidate the student data, but it certainly could be that they're just not engaged. So I kind of separate these two. The bottom here, we obviously want to make sure that our students are engaged in these tests, because if they're not, then they're probably not going to do their best. No matter whether they're engaged or not, the results on the top aren't acceptable. And we can go back to why they're not engaged, or this, that, or the other thing. But it is interesting to see, 6th, 7th grade, 39% of students had their tests flagged, not necessarily invalidated, but.
Dave, question with that. If we're seeing 36, for instance, 7th grade, you're seeing 36%, and we're expecting 70, so we're half. At that seventh grade level in the reading classwork, we should expect to see a significant number of students failing the English and the reading as well. Do we see the same corresponding data with actual failures or poor grades as we do with the standardized testing?
I can't answer that right now, but I will. I'll take a look, because we haven't compared that data to this data here.
Because if we were saying that this is accurate data, we should see that within those classes, they're failing as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're seeing that 90% of them are passing their classes with a C or a B or whatever above, then it likely isn't matching up.
That's a great point. And again, I hear your point. We want to make sure that our grades are truly authentic and measuring success and all of that. And then it is possible that they just don't perform well on tests. That could be. And if they're not aligned, we got to fix that system, so.
Well, welcome to life. We got tests every day.
Yeah.
We got to deal with it.
I will share, so M-STEP data is embargoed right now, which means we can't share it with the public, we can't share it with the board. All we have is every student's individual results before they've been put in through all the calculations and whatever they do. But I just kind of took a look through the junior high data. I did all of it, but I saw some junior high students on NWEA at the absolute top of the scale. And academically, they received awards in our 8th grade celebration, and then some others. And then their M-STEP score, they're not even near the top. And people have been saying for a long time that the M-STEP is not aligned with what we're doing. And so I thought that was really interesting. There was a significant difference between their NWA scores and their academic success in the building compared to the Michigan State test.
It begs the question whether the test is a misrepresentation or is the classroom not grading to level.
Grade inflation.
Yeah, grade inflation.
Yep.
And I have to say that I have seen a fair amount of that where it's not necessarily outcome is what they're being graded on, but rather participation or turn in grades 2 months late and still get credit for it and so on and so forth.
Yep.
I have one of those kids and it's a constant battle. But
So
I personally would not give him as good of a grade as he got, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, and so grading is a whole thing that we are making plans to venture into. It is really complex to get every teacher at a grade level or in a subject area to, grade the same way. But that's the goal. We want to make sure that we aren't just grading crossword puzzles and things like that, but then also that the grade is reflective of their performance on the standards and those sorts of things. So, and that's, there's extra credit, there's things like this, but as a district, we need to just rein that whole process in so that the teachers have more guidance in that area of this is what the grade should be based on, this is how we do these things, with the hope of aligning it with all of these other standardized tests and all of that. So it's a big process. We've had many conversations in a year, dating back to the middle of last year. And so we've put a committee together to start exploring how do we approach that. People like their A's, their B's, their C's, and so what does that mean? There's a whole lot to it, but we're heading in that direction.
As I look at the math scores and as we get the NWA M-STEP scores and kind of look at the big picture, hopefully the district will also maybe do 2 subsets and compare the kids at the junior high who are taking traditional math versus like the Alex pathways and see if one is heavily outperforming the other.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask the same question regarding project-based learning, to see if one of those groups is outperforming the other. I think that would be very interesting to know, because that might, and also to know before project-based learning, what were our scores in these areas? My suspicion is, based on what I've heard about it, and what I've seen personally, that has dragged those scores down somewhat. But again, I'm just guessing until I see real data, but I think that would be interesting.
Yeah. And I can't speak to what you're talking, I can tell you that scores have been declining for many years, but that's just a very general statement. Not specific to any particular reason or program or anything. But. So we have a lot of work to do on analyzing data and also making sure that our grading system is in alignment and giving an accurate picture. Same thing, we're required to break them down by various subgroups. And so the RIT, you ask me every time, Dr.
I know,
Lawson.
and I
It is
always
someone's
forget.
name.
Yeah, somebody's
It is
name.
a vetted unit of, I can't, it's someone's last name who developed this scale, and it gives us a way to, compare performance across multiple age groups. And so the numbers get bigger as the age group goes up. It's been tested, it's been authenticated, and all of that. Basically, you see here in second grade, the RIT number, that's what after you take the NWA test, it generates a RIT score for the students. So, first off, between all the subgroups, they're pretty consistent. They're going up in grade because the expected RIT score is higher at each level. So that's very positive. Again, you see some variance here between the male and female and the overall. Oops. But nothing significant there. I will tell you, in general, all of our district RIT scores are below where we should be. We need to raise those up across the board. This breaks it down. Red is special ed and yellow is non-special ed. So again, some very interesting things. In second grade, you have the special ed being slightly lower. But then in the next 3 grades, 3rd, 4th, 5th, it's above. Dips down a little bit, dips, but still within the range of the average RIT score for that particular grade level.
Do those special ed students take the test with it, like in a more controlled environment, maybe where the teachers are monitoring that they're
Yeah, it
not
comes
just
down
click,
to
click, click?
They come
or-
down, they have,
their
accommodations. Accommodations on their IEPs to,
Yep.
for testing.
Yeah, if it states accommodations, then they would get those accommodations. Red is economically disadvantaged, and yellow is non-economically disadvantaged. So from this, it's pretty hard to say that our economically disadvantaged students perform lower than our non. There's, a case here, but 6th grade's above. 5th grade is slightly above. It's below, and pretty much even, I think, from reading that. Okay, so that is 2 through 8, and then 9 through 12, English language arts. And so grades are still being calculated and posted, so we couldn't pull the second semester numbers for this report. I think they're actually either today or tomorrow they're being published, so we're just off a little bit. But Eric, to go back, you wanted to know what the average grade point was, or average grade was for. Well, let me back up. So the goal is 85% of the Michigan English Language Arts credit graduates attempted in semester 1 will be earned by AHS and ACES students. So 85, we're going to pass the credits that they attempted. So 81% of the credits in semester 1 were attempted. The average grade for those credits earned was a C+, which, looking at it now, doesn't really tell us much. We'll get you a grade distribution, I would think would be more informative. How many A's, how many B's, how many C's, and so on.
Especially when you got 81% that passed, but your average grade's C+, so you're still taking into account those that didn't make the 81%, which would drag the data down further. That's not very impressive, actually.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we'll get to the math, so they'll be even less impressed. But you're right. Again, and the state doesn't really give us much guidance, but passing a credit shouldn't, there's a time and a place for that to be when you're in a pass-fail situation. But we want them not only to pass it, but to excel at it.
And there's no way to measure academic proficiency in those topics when it's a pass-fail as your benchmark. That's
Yeah, exactly.
setting the bar pretty low.
Yeah. Yep.
You can breathe and pass.
Yeah, I passed high school.
Yeah.
And trust me, I didn't put a lot in.
So this, again, we have to break it down by groups, percent of credits. So again, 81% of credits were earned, 72% of those were, special ed students, 72%, they passed 72% of their credits. Economically disadvantaged, 83% of their credits were passed, male and female you see there. Moving on to math. So with math, we used in kindergarten and first, Imagine Math, and it has a benchmark assessment, and it produces a number, quantile. And so you see there, it works where there's a number in front of a Q, and basically it kind of centers the student into where they're at and what they're ready to take on. And so in kindergarten first, the goal statement was 70% of the students would achieve a proficient quantile level. And so, based on your age group and what is considered proficient on this, 80% of the students achieved a quantile score of proficient or higher. And then in kindergarten and in first, 96% of the students achieved a quantile score of proficient or advanced. So, and then this gets kind of confusing. This represents those students that met that benchmark. The kindergarten looks as if so you get a score that says EM, which is emerging mathematician. That generates a negative number, so for the purpose of these reports, they convert those to positive numbers. So when we're looking at this, out of that 80% at kindergarten, it's the females that actually did not meet, or they were that far below the qualifying, the proficient quantile. So overall, it was above, and the males were above there. At first grade, again, the scores are higher because it's a higher grade level, but very little distribution between males and females, or a difference between. Special ed, same thing. So our special ed students in kindergarten did not perform as well as our non-special ed. And then over here, special ed in first grade, like we saw in the other, they performed better than our non-special ed students. Economically disadvantaged and non-disadvantaged. So here again, economically disadvantaged in kindergarten didn't perform as well as non-economic, but in first grade, they did. They performed better than them. So again, math, NWEA. Goal was 70% of students will achieve the score of average or above, 50th percentile or above. And we hit it in third grade, so that's good for third grade. But again, the other numbers are below where we wanted to be. And just for your reference, the rapid guessing is down below. Same thing, taking the RIT scores, the average RIT scores, and breaking them down, male, female. A little bit more difference than we saw in the reading scores between the genders, but still they're all within the same area. 202 to 198 is a fairly significant difference, but I think in general those are pretty close there. Special ed's red, yellow is non-special ed. And again, it's interesting to see some of the grade levels where special ed performed higher. Economically disadvantaged and compared to non-disadvantaged, again, quite a few of them where they had performed higher. And then back to our credit analysis for 9 through 12. Same thing, grades weren't available to have the second semester, but going back and looking at it, instead of a C plus as the average for credits earned is a C. And again, we'll go back, and kind of break it down a little bit more with a grade distribution to see. And then breaking that down, the distribution is a little bit tighter than it was in reading.
Do you feel that, obviously math is something that has to be built upon level by level, age by age. If you don't have the concepts at one, you're not going to be able to build on to do the next. So if you lack the foundation, you're never going to excel in math particularly. Most topics it's the same way, obviously. But if we're seeing decreased proficiency at the lower grades, and I guess my question is, if we're seeing that decreased proficiency at those levels and we, let's say, hold that kid at that level in order to allow that proficiency to come up, rather than allowing them to slide through where they don't have the foundation, now you're asking more of them, their grades, of course, are going to be worse and their proficiency worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where it kind of loops back around to my question, how many of these students are we seeing that are actually failing the coursework or are being held back because of non-proficiency in topics, or are we allowing them to slide through being non-proficient and then expecting them to somehow magically make up the difference? Does that make sense, my question?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
And so obviously it's two different conversations when you're talking about high school credits, and they're not allowed to advance, they have to get this many credits for graduation. So that one, if they don't pass English 9, they continue to try and pass English 9 and so on. At the lower levels, it's much more of a nuanced conversation. There's not much research that supports retention as a way to improve all sorts of, or to fill those gaps in. So when I say retention, you're in first grade, you haven't mastered it, you don't move to second grade. You don't move to third grade and so on. There's not much research that says that actually works. But that doesn't mean we don't kind of do the same thing daily, weekly, monthly in the classrooms. You'll hear teachers talk about differentiation in their classroom, where they've got the kids that are ready to go on to this and the kids that aren't and all of that. So a lot of that falls to the teacher to, figure out how do we bring those students up to and, keep them moving forward. So there's lots that we do there. We have our title services. We have small group interventions. You go back to the MTSS tier. We've got lots of supports and intensified instruction and remediation, whatever it might be, to do that. The challenge is that pyramid is kind of upside down, where we have a very large number of students that, whatever the reason, COVID, they weren't in school, this, that, or the other thing, or they were homeschooled and they never, learned it, or whatever. And I just use those because we've seen, students come to us for the first time in third grade and they can't spell their name. They can't, they can't do these kind of things. But the point is, we're seeing that inverse pyramid where we have to get intensive support to so many. If we were to take that from one grade and move it up, then it gets even bigger, and move it up and it gets bigger and bigger. But your point of not moving on, if they're not ready to move on, that does happen quite a bit in the classroom when the teacher's working with them and we're providing those supports. Did that sort of approach an answer?
We'll go with it, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. And going to the third grade law where we were supposed to retain and not based on the M-STEP test, yes, it would be great if we could hold them and get them up to date and move on. Problem is that group keeps getting bigger and bigger, and I'm speaking in generalities. We're seeing more significant gaps in skills.
If retention is brought up for a student
Mhm.
in the lower levels, and I'm just going on experience from my prior, but, so how does that proceed in this district?
So, parents are involved, as
Right.
early as fall conference or, early in the year. Ultimately, that final conversation takes place in about early April, I think. There's board policy that has a date when retention notices have to be communicated. So the parents involved in that, and it's seen as a last resort. The principal does reserve the right to place the student where they feel best, and sometimes it is retaining, and sometimes it is moving on. An example might be where they just don't read and write well, but they're a math superstar. They're a science, it'd be tough to be science without reading, that kind of thing. But, it comes down to the individual case.
It's case by case, but when it comes down to the final decision, is it the principal's decision or is it the parent's decision?
The principal, board policy says the principal can
Principal,
place
yeah.
the students where they see best.
Okay.
But it's not a principal decision, it's a
It's
team.
a team.
It's not only the parents, it's the teacher, it's any other support, staff or anything like that. The student and parents are involved in those conversations.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, how many students did we retain this year?
I don't have that number in my head.
I was just curious if it's a
Yeah.
big number or a small
No,
number.
it's not. If I say a number, will you not hold me? I
will not hold you
Okay.
dead to rights here.
I want to say it was 12 or less.
Out of the entire
K-
district.
Yeah, K through 8. Well, K through 6, because again, 7 and 8,
So less than a dozen out of the entire district. Okay.
formally retained, yeah.
According to that math score, it looked like all 7th grade should have been retained.
Yeah.
I think Megan took a day on purpose here.
No, she didn't. But again, our data isn't good, and we've got to figure out why. There are great things happening in every classroom across this district. We're sending kids to, great post-high school experiences and everything. It's how do we just broaden that brush and make sure that the vast majority of our students are experiencing that as well? So I don't want to paint a dismal picture, but I also don't want to paint a rosy picture where, oh yeah, it's fine. It's not. We're looking for a piece of data, hard data that says we're doing things right, and so far we don't have that right now, and so we gotta work on that.
And do we look at the kids who were started school as early as their parents could get them in, versus the ones who were not even at kindergarten until they were going on 6? Do we look at that at all?
Well, to me, the urgency is, let's look at the students that are in front of us right now and how do we get them
Right.
to improve. Those kind of broader views of, I'd like to know, how do Sanborn students fare all the way through high school, and Wilson, and, all of those different factors. But, and that's kind of what the summer's for, but, when we're in the school year, we want to focus on the daily, the weekly, the monthly instruction. So yeah, anecdotally, we've had students come to us and knock it out of the park immediately. And then we've had students come to us, like I said, in 3rd grade, and they can't read or write and those kind of things. And we're responsible for every student, no matter what happened prior to them coming to us.
So anytime you have data that's dropping or going up for that matter, you do a root cause analysis, which goes back to the point at which change occurred and see what happened at that point in time. I know it's quite easy for people to say COVID, 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 but the data clearly shows that we were dropping well before that.
Yeah.
It was a downward trend. It took a significant drop during COVID, but from what I see, it's kind of plateaued after that. So, I think that, we have to be careful that we don't blame everything on COVID.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, have we, to do an honest debate, Have we looked back in time to see at what point did we start to see these drops? And then look at what occurred around that time. And so, because, there has been, significant changes in education as far as even the way math is taught with Common Core, Did we see that implementation and then shortly after we start to see a decline? And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying to have an honest debate, that's how you would have to look at it.
Yeah.
Is that,
So here's the trick. So Common Core came out in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. In 2013, 14, 15, the MEP became the M-STEP. And you can't compare the two. We went from ACT to SAT around the same time. So it's really hard to get that longer trajectory of comparing data, apples to apples, because of those two major shifts. And we might suggest that that was by design, at the state level. I don't know. I do know we spent 2 years in education chasing the Smarter, Balanced, and the PARC tests that were going to measure Common Core for the first time in these beautiful assessments. And, we always have a moving target in education. It wasn't even visible, and then it just disappeared. But they made us work and, got all geared up for this big shift. And instead of going Smarter, Balanced, and PARC, we went to M-STEP, a hybrid of both of those. So your point is spot on. But from a, standardized test, we just really can't go back beyond the switch to SAT. And by the way, we're switching SAT again next year.
so that we can never measure the data?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I literally had this conversation today with John Studley of, it's going to be 3-4 years before we can now rely on the data from the new SAT, which is, and I'm not up on this 100%, but apparently the SAT is going to be an adaptive test.
Yes. Yep. All electronic and then adaptive, so it gets harder as you do well, or it
Yeah.
gets easy, so.
So standardized in adaptive, but not standardized. So yes, there's that. And thank you for letting me vent a little bit. It is really complex, and I agree. We've got to figure out what's going on right now. Our teachers are working harder than they ever have. Our administrators are working harder than they ever have. I would suggest the vast majority of our students are, but we're just not honing in on what it is we need to be doing to turn that tide.
Well, and I want to say, I appreciate that, like at the junior high and the high school, I've noticed that this year, more of an emphasis on holding kids accountable for their grades, with not being able to go to homecoming or, school events, because, having kids in both those grade levels, I hear over and over again this culture of it being kind of cool to get bad grades, and that kids just don't care, and having conversations with parents of young people who want to rip their hair out because they look at Parent View and they're, why are your grades so bad? Why are you not turning in these assignments? So there's just this like disconnect of importance of good education. Like they're just, a lot of the kids just don't seem to really care.
I think you can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, the last instance of that happened on a mass scale that I'm aware of was during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And the students in the class who got the worst grades were the heroes, because they were rejecting all of that higher learning, and they were listening to the Red Guard, what the Maos were saying, and your ideological obedience was by far much more important than anything that you could learn or demonstrate in a classroom. And you'll hear people who are saying that that's happening in the United States, and the symptom would look exactly like that.
Well, I think we can also see it too by the kids who just take that NWA and just click on an answer just to get through it, because they don't. And I've given the NWA, and I've watched my second graders do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep.
So is switching testing over to electronics necessarily in the best benefit of, if you're clicking through?
But you can click through on a paper and pencil
Yeah, you can.
by looking at cute little
Yeah.
design, ABC, CBA, ABC, all the way down the page. Kids do that as well. I've
Because
seen
I've
that
given
happen.
both. I've given the electronic one, and I've also given, when I was teaching in Virginia, it started out, we had something called the standards of learning, because our standards didn't go with, we weren't Common Core in the state of Virginia, still aren't. So we had the standards of learning exam, and at first it was paper and pencil, and, you know, you could just, yeah, they wouldn't concentrate, just going through it, yeah. So it's a tough
Yeah.
go.
If we created our own test, that we would say, okay, we know this is arbitrary, but it's the best we can do now, and we're never going to change it. Would we find the staff just sort of rocking back and forth in a corner, drooling if we made them do that, pretty much?
Yes.
Yes, we would.
Yes, you would.
Okay, well, I don't want to ask anyone to do that.
Yes, you would.
You know, the idea behind locally created assessments is spot on. In my experience, and I've heard, because we were working towards common assessments here in Alpena, from what I understand, and then again, it kind of stopped when COVID came along and we had to shift all of that. We went through trying to get to common assessments, and what that means is that every fifth grade student takes the same test at the end of a social studies chapter or something. Same with, and the idea isn't necessarily for grades, but how are they all doing on the standards throughout the year? And then you can look at, okay, we know the fifth grade is good at this, not good at this, as well as the student. Right away, teachers said, I'm not an assessment expert, and they're not. And so they had that anxiety of, you know, what if it's not a good test? You know, we can say the M-STEP's not a good test, and that's okay because we didn't create it. But that puts them in a really tough spot of, we're now trusting that they know how to create an assessment that is valid, reliable, on top of everything they have to do in teaching, so.
But I don't think Eric meant for the teachers to do it necessarily. Did you?
Well, just that, that APS would
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
they would have something for each grade level, for, you know, each subject.
So it does come down to, do we pick something off a shelf, or do we create, or do we cut and paste our own? There's a whole thing to it, and,
As long as you kept the data, even if it wasn't perfect, as long as you kept that throughout the time, you could create longitudinal data. With changing the benchmarks and the testing every few years, you're never going to be able to obtain that longitudinal data that's accurate, like you're saying. So, I know I'm not.
again, we are working towards common assessment because we know that it's valid and we control it, and that's good. But we've got to get a lot of things in place before we start going through that.
Otherwise.
And it's a tough process.
Yeah.
Correct?
Who are you going to pay to do that?
Right.
Yeah. You know, where we've got our PD time, and, you know,
Yeah.
so,
Thank you.
anything else?
Can we get a copy of this email too?
Yep.
Yeah.
It was not
Yep,
linked.
and just for the public too, so this gets posted on our transparency page on the website, it's part of the requirements, and then we'll share this, I think is it on the interactive agenda, or no?
Oh, it is not.
Okay.
It's not, I didn't
So
see
we'll
it.
send it out. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah. I just have to say, in, closing, you know, Dr. Rabideau, you're not Megan, but that was a pretty darn good report. I really appreciated that presentation, so.
Although you didn't know what RIT stood for, unit
And
something.
every single time, I mean,
Ratio. Yeah, ratio.
okay.
Yeah, RAS. Yeah.
One of these days, I'll be able to remember that.
No, it was great.
Don't fill your brain with that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. All right, up next, citizens and delegations to address the board. Okay, seeing no one racing forward, we will move on to approval of consent agenda items. We have a longer list. We're getting a little bit more proficient in using our consent agendas, so you'll notice there are some policies from last week's meeting that we reviewed that did not have changes. So I just wanted to point those out, that those were included in the consent agenda items. So we will need a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion on these? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Old business. There's some policies in front of us that we did want to discuss. Policy 5200, attendance. This was for second reading.
And so, let me just get caught up.
Yeah.
I should have a colored copy, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, right behind all the old minutes. Okay. I believe 52. I've not found mine yet, but.
All right, so attendance on the second page, you'll see the changes that we had talked about. I believe we've captured them as the board intended.
It's there, it's in the back of the
Yeah,
agenda.
you gotta go through.
5200?
5200, it's just a single page, no staple.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I was thinking,
Let me bring that up, because it almost looks like it got cut off in print a little bit.
Did get cut off.
That's what it looks like. So let me bring that.
Oh yeah, we're missing C, oh, part of C maybe.
Part of
or
C.
So I'll read it in its entirety.
seeing how that's the one we were changing. I suppose.
Yeah, it's interesting how
Yeah.
that one got cut off. So C says, ensure the student is not given a reduced grade or his/her credit is not unconditionally revoked based on attendance alone unless assigned work is not completed in a timely manner as directed by the instructor and/or administrator. If you need me to read that again, I can.
I'm just looking at it in the interactive agenda, it's on there, so.
Yes, it is.
And then the only other change down at the bottom was such guidelines shall be provide.
I like C much better. I think
I do
it
too.
very, very accurately captures the spirit of what the board discussed, and I think it looks like it will be a very
It's concise
effective
and to the
policy.
point.
Okay, I love
Yeah,
it.
great language on that, Eric.
Yeah.
You pulled
Yeah, it's
that one out.
concise and
so.
to the point.
Okay, so if everyone's okay with this one, we'll need a motion to approve policy 5200 attendance as presented to satisfy pupil accounting requirements for 2023-2024.
I would offer that motion.
And I would support it.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, show of hands, please.
Okay.
Thank you, passes unanimously. Up next, second reading of Neola policies. Moving on, policy 1615, use of tobacco by administrators.
And so, if you remember, the exceptions, and they weren't consistent between the three groups, and so now we've made them consistent. We are not taking the exceptions at the end of this policy. And when you looked at it, they were being taken for this group, but no other group.
Yes.
And then the education and training, a little bit up, the second page, same thing. It was inconsistent between the groups, and so we are not doing this, not taking this, or we're not recommending that we take it. And that's consistent between the three policies.
It is.
I think, and then we added in, when you looked at it the first time, on the front page, the school name was blank. So we've just added the school name to a couple of those paragraphs.
Spelled it out. And don't forget, on that one section, under advertising and promotion on
Oh, yeah.
1615, you changed a word because it was incorrect in here. The word here, we changed to gear.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's gear on the other ones,
Yeah.
which you
But
saw.
On this one, it was here. for
It was
some
here.
reason.
It was here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Okay, in addition here, does add the wording E1 for marijuana, because I know we were looking at the entire policy for tobacco alone, but it didn't really say anything about marijuana, which is now actually a legal substance, so it doesn't fall in the illegal substance policies anymore. And I couldn't really find anything in policy that said we couldn't. And so at a, high school football game, there's technically nothing that says people can't show up and smoke marijuana because it doesn't fall under the tobacco policy. But this does add that in. I'm understanding, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
I still think isn't smoking marijuana in public not permitted? It's only in the privacy of private space, I believe.
Don't honestly know.
Yeah, I think that should.
Age.
Yeah, but so is there on tobacco.
Yeah, but I do think it's still, you can only smoke marijuana in private setting, not in a public place. Don't think everyone
Good to know,
abides by
yeah.
that, but, yeah.
All right.
Why do you notice that?
Because I've looked it up.
With e-cigarettes though, or the vaping, you really can't tell the difference.
Right.
Correct.
So this would cover us
Yep.
regardless. Okay, very good.
Yep.
Smell like marijuana.
And there was another kind of catch-all, maybe that's what I was thinking, but it says, oh, yeah, so on the front page, tobacco product, talks about a device, whether it contains nicotine or not. Any electronic smoking device and substances that may be aerosoled or vaporized by such device, whether or not the substance contains nicotine, not the marijuana like you're talking about.
Okay.
But yes, so this one spells that out.
Good.
Okay, so we have three policies that are pretty much identical here, but we're, the first one that we'll need a motion on is the use of, the use of tobacco by administrators, which is, we'll need a motion to approve policy 1615 as presented.
Support.
Did we present the motion?
Motion?
I'll make the motions, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
My mind is wandering.
I didn't even catch that, so thank you.
Gordon then.
Gordon. Gordon.
Yes, I got it, yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, show of hands, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Next one, very similar, policy 3215, use of tobacco by professional staff.
I make that motion to accept the policy 3215.
I'll support that.
We have a motion and support. Any conversation? Hearing none, show of hands in support of policy 3215.
Okay.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Policy 4215, same policy, use of tobacco by support staff. We'll need a motion to approve policy 4215 as presented.
Move to accept 4215 as
Okay.
written.
Support.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously. Next up, new business. 2022-23 General Appropriations Budget Amendment 3. This is the 2022-2023 General Appropriations Budget from the last meeting. We'll need a motion to adopt the preamble and resolution of the 2022-23 General Appropriations Budget Amendment 3 Resolution as presented.
Yeah, we'll make that
I have a
two.
question?
We'll make that two.
Two, that is, okay, yep, so.
I'm sorry, did I?
That was
got-
in your budget packet?
No, I'm back one step yet. For the four policies that we didn't do anything with.
Those were the ones that we approved already in the
Oh,
consent
okay.
agenda items. Yep, those didn't have any
See, I knew I was
changes from.
behind.
Did that include the student assessment one?
Yes.
I did note one perhaps typo on that. I'm sorry, I should have brought that up earlier, but I just caught my notes here. If you don't mind. Subsection A here, the M-STEP, MME and readiness assessment approved by the state superintendent, 5 and 8. I assume it means grades 5 through 8? It just says 5 and 8 there. There's really no reference to what they are.
Readiness, well, let me just see that. M-STEP. Superintendent shall program. Should be 5.
Is that grades 5 and 8?
Yeah.
I don't. You see where I'm at?
I do, yeah.
Because down further, it says grades
1 through 5.
1 through 5.
1 through 5.
Yeah.
So I would assume that's what it means.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't catch that. So it's 3 through 8, but maybe. Yeah, I would have to
Okay, so.
double check because doesn't make sense that
We
it's
can pull
5
this
and
off.
8.
Well,
Doesn't make sense that it's 5 through 8.
Well, and it doesn't have any reference what they mean to
Yep.
begin with, so this.
Yep, and it was, okay, no.
All right, so let's amend some stuff here. on
Good
Sphero.
catch. I think we need to,
Amend that
Um,
because.
I guess, either,
Can we propose a motion then to bring it back for review? Is that what you, would be appropriate at this
Well,
point?
we already
Yeah,
approved
we already-
in the consent agenda, so we would have to, I would have to adjust the minutes to pull that from the consent agenda, and then we can reapprove the consent agenda.
Yep.
so
Either that or just rescind the approval.
Can we
on
move
that
to
one
rescind the
item,
approval on this specific
Pending,
motion?
pending clarification on that question?
that works
Does
for me.
that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, then
that's
I'll-
easy.
then I'll move to rescind our approval of policy 2623 and bring it back after edits for clarification.
And I support that.
Okay.
Okay, so we rescind the approval of policy 2623, student assessment made by Eric H., support by Eric L.
Eric, I'm disappointed that you didn't catch that.
You know, me too,
I'm shocked.
yes.
Well, the record will show that Eric caught it.
Well, some there.
I'll have the last name.
2223.
Okay, we need, any other conversation about rescinding that approval? Hearing none, all in favor? Show of hands. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, thanks for catching that, yep, so. We'll bring that one back next time. And now we'll move forward with new business to the 2022-23 General Appropriations Budget Amendment 2. Motion to adopt the preamble and resolution of the 2022-23 General Appropriations Budget Amendment 2 resolution as presented.
You waiting for a motion?
Yep, motion, or probably.
I will make the motion.
Support?
Okay, any conversation? Okay, hearing none, this is a resolution, we'll do a roll call.
Okay. Just make my note here. All right. Member Fritz?
Aye.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
Member Snow?
Aye.
Member MacArthur?
Aye.
Member Meinhardt?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Up next, the 2023-24 General Appropriations Budget Resolution. We'll need a motion to adopt the preamble and resolution of the 2023-24 General Appropriations Budget Resolution as presented.
I would move to adopt the preamble and resolution of the 2023-2024 General Appropriations Budget Resolution as presented.
Support.
Any conversation on this? No? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, please.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
Member Snow?
Aye.
Member MacArthur?
Aye.
Member Fritz?
Aye.
And Member Meinhardt?
Aye. Okay, thank you. Item C, 80/20 cost share resolution for 2023-24. And we discussed this also at our workshop last week. And we had that one change. I think the president was listed wrong, and that looks like that's been changed. So with this, we will need a motion to adopt the 2023-24 80/20 cost share preamble and resolution as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, any conversation about this? Hearing none, this is a roll call as well, please.
Member Hanson?
Aye.
Member Snow?
Aye.
Member MacArthur?
Hi.
Member Fritz?
Aye.
Member Lawson?
Aye.
And Member Meinhardt.
Aye. Up next, 2023-24 proposed instructional calendar. Do you want to say anything about, I know we talked about this last week at the workshop about some of the changes. I just didn't know if you wanted to touch on it for people here or listening.
Just biggest pieces for our students, family, and staff. Students arrive on, well, see, now you put me in the position of I know how many days until the teachers come back, and
Oh.
I'm not supposed to announce that.
Well, don't
so.
announce it then.
Anyway, students' first day is August 28th. Students' last day and staff's last day is June 7th. So consistent with this year, basically. A new day on President's Day in February. Shout out to our Wilson crew.
Yeah.
And other than that, another big piece is the day before Thanksgiving break is a full day off, so that's Wednesday. I think that's the 22nd, correct? Is that how that reads?
Yep, Wednesday, the
Yes.
22nd. Mhm.
So Wednesday, 22nd is no school, the 23rd is Thanksgiving Day. And we still have November 15th, the Fall Family Day. So I don't believe I could have done that in any more illogical order, but there you go. First, last, sort of in the middle, but it will be published tomorrow on our website, and people can view it there, pending board approval.
And I think you mentioned last week there was fewer half-days maybe, is that correct?
There are, yes.
Fewer half-days.
Yep.
Well, I would move to approve the 23-24 instructional calendar.
Support.
Okay, thank you. Any further conversation? All right, all in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, passes unanimously. Up next, consider the new ELA curriculum. Thank you to Megan last week for a great presentation on this and a nice packet for us all to go home with.
And thanks to the board members, Gordon and Sarah and Eric, for participating in that process as well.
So we will need, in order to adopt this, we'll need to adopt the we'll need a recommendation to adopt the Benchmark Advance K-5 English Language Arts curriculum through Benchmark Education and accept the 5-year bid total of $373,209.40.
I so make the motion.
Support.
Any conversation? I know we had a lot of great conversation last week. I think it's interesting to note where some of these bids came in between, I think this was by no luck. I mean, it was the best curriculum, but it also happened to be the lowest bid, but having some curriculums stretch over the $900,000 mark. And if I recall, and Mary left, there's hope for some of this to come out of ESSER 3 funds.
Yes, and so they were trying to get an answer, but with the holiday and vacations at the state, when I left on Wednesday, they had not gotten an answer, so. But yes, we might be able to use ESSER for as much of it as possible, and then the rest come out of general fund subsequent years.
I was gonna ask, does it come all at once, or does it like, I couldn't remember.
It all depends. Yeah, I'm getting into a little bit of a gray area here, but Well, it would have to be expended, the ESSER funds would have to be expended by next December. And if we can use that full amount, we can do that. If we can't use ESSER, then it'll come out annually, well, no, it'll come from general fund.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah. So I think we have the full amount in ESSER or a large portion of it. So it may be a blended.
I think there was like 25 teachers, is that right, for next year who were cohort one, who were going to be
Yep.
piloting it, so.
Yep. And all across the district, or elementary schools.
Yep. Nice split between all the schools and then spread out for everybody in cohort 2 the next year. And it was to say that in the 5-year contract. Nice to have it be more inclusive, include writing and grammar as well, so.
Writing and grammar, and it also has the thing that for English language learners, I know we don't have many, but eventually we will, and it does have the support for them also. And it does bring back phonics and phonemic awareness, and so I really, especially K through 2, which is more my wheelhouse, I was really impressed, and it's also very teacher-friendly. I think it's a good resource.
Great.
Shall we put Mary on the spot?
I was good with that.
Well, it's an easy, I'll ask the easy question. Did we hear back from Kevin at the state as to whether we can use ESSER for the ELA curriculum?
I have not. I get a feeling that he's on vacation.
Okay.
I have his personal cell phone, but I hesitate to call it.
Yeah, not necessary. Okay, it's great. I'm excited about this. And thank you for participating, the 3 of you, in this process, so. I think we had motion on the floor, right? We were just conversation,
support.
so.
Yes, I
think
think
so,
so,
yeah.
Sarah and Gordon.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously. Up next, to consider the APS Athletic Handbook.
Yeah, and so Mr. Studley presented it with some minor changes to the handbook last week. Increase in, or aligning of the progress report with our grade checks and that.
Yep, not too many changes this year, other than that, it seemed like, so.
Guess we should plug the addition of the swim team for the upcoming year
Yep, excited
at the
about
high
that.
school. And then we'll be talking about it later, but with the MHSAA resolution, 6th grade students, if we can find competition, they'll be able to participate in some events too.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to approve the athletic handbook for the 2023-24 as presented.
I move to accept the athletic handbook for 2023-24 as presented.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. All in favor, show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously. G, consider the MHSAA membership resolution.
And so we did discuss this, just for everyone's awareness, because I wasn't really aware of this. MHSAA really controls the postseason in all of our sports, and so we have to be a part of that group if we want our students to participate in postseason. So the only change from when you saw it last week was 6 through 8 has been now indicated on the back, with 6th grade being indicated. I think it said yes or something when you looked at it, but the substance has not changed. So the board has to approve this on an annual basis if they want our students to participate in postseason.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion and support on the floor. Any further discussion?
I was gonna say, we
Oh,
don't
we
have a
didn't,
motion
oh,
on
I
this
said,
one, yeah.
oh, that was the last one, AJ did that, sorry, I got to jot down. All right, so we do need a motion to adopt the preamble and resolution for the 2023-24 MHSAA membership as presented.
So moved.
Thank you.
Support.
Okay, now we have a motion and support. Okay, all in favor, well, this is a resolution.
I had a question on this. So they just govern the after season, the
The postseason?
postseason, thank you.
Postseason?
The postseason rules, or do they govern all the sports rules?
That's a good question. I don't know how it's documented, like, I can't think of something that we wouldn't follow. Yeah?
They do govern the whole season, like they set forth the, like football, for example, how many, how long you have for,
How many games you can play.
how many
Mhm.
games you can play, how long the quarters are, at what age, and stuff like that. Or whether you have 8-man football or a full team, or, so they do govern the whole.
And we sign up just as a district, the board doesn't need to sign up.
Right.
Okay.
Say that part again, Dave?
So the board is only required to do this, which singles out the postseason.
Okay, and then the athletic director.
That you're voluntarily part of this, yeah. John's already got his schedule set, that's an ongoing process of putting all those things in place. So I'm probably making that more confusing. than it
No,
needs to
no,
be.
I'm just processing that for a minute. Okay. I think I understand now.
Yeah, what I think was interesting is we talked about how, we did talk about last week about it being postseason, but this whole resolution it is a membership resolution from August 1st. So it is.
Yeah, I guess
It's
yeah.
encompassing the whole season, not just postseason.
So-
But they did say something about how if we don't do this, we can't participate in,
participate
you can't participate in
in tournaments.
postseason
Season.
activities was mentioned.
So whatever rules they make, we have to follow.
Right, like the grade point, I think before, that was part of it too, is we had one grade point requirement, but MHSAA had their own grade point requirement, and so now we have aligned ours to match with theirs, because I
Was it
know
lower or higher?
ours,
We raised ours
yeah,
in the last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was saying this wrong. I mean, the ultimate is, yeah, if we can play, but we can't be in the tournaments. I mean, that's spelled out here in that second paragraph. But it is voluntary, you're joining this voluntarily, so you're joining MHSAA, and you agree to abide by and enforce the rules.
So that would.
So, I misspoke. I
No,
apologize. Yeah.
I just had a thought, that we are giving authority away here in a as far as who plays where.
What do you mean by that?
If the guys want to run, or if the guys want to join the girls' swim team, that was in MA. This guy says, yeah, we gotta let that go, even if this board says we don't want to do that.
So I can tell you that MHSAA has a whole process to go through that. I think it came up last year. Did we talk about that, or I'm not sure. But there is, you just can't do it. You have to get it approved by MHSAA. And if I remember correctly, MHSAA has not approved a single request to do that.
Okay.
Might be one. It's an extensive process, and it's in their handbook now that it's coming back to me. It's not just, I'd like to sign up. You have to go through a process. And
Okay.
I believe it even includes meeting with a committee at MHSAA to go through everything.
Okay. I got to think about it, like, how far does this go?
It's handled on a case-by-case basis, and it takes 30 days for
Yep.
you to I have it here, when questions arise involving trans female, male to female student athletes, the MHSSA executive director will determine the eligibility for tournaments on a case-by-case basis.
That's for tournaments only.
And that's for tournaments, and it says, oh shoot, I'm sorry, my phone it's small. By the administration of the school for which the student seeks to participate in documentation that answers the following questions. They have a whole list of questions you have to answer. And it's a case-by-case process, and according to something I read, 11, in the past 5 years, 11 applications have been brought before the board. But really only 7 of them were, 4 of them were brought by the same student. So basically only 7 have been brought before the board. I don't know the outcome, but, so that's just, and it's, it's in their handbook.
That's all I had.
Well, I know these are difficult conversations, but like we talked about last time, these are conversations we are going to have because it's, it's going to become more prevalent, and I don't know that this resolution right here is necessarily the format to have that conversation. I think that takes a lot of forethought and careful planning and careful discussion, but just as a board, that is something we are going to need to address in the near future, I believe, so. At some point,
Just a
I'd like to see
policy
that.
there.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we have a motion and support on the floor for this membership resolution. Any further conversation?
Should we do a roll call again for this
Yeah,
one?
I'll do a roll call. Okay.
Just make a note here. Member Hanson.
Aye.
Member Snow.
Aye.
Member MacArthur.
No.
Okay. Member Fritz.
Aye.
Member Lawson.
Aye.
And Member Meinhardt.
Aye.
Okay.
And I do raise a question of parliamentary inquiry, just to make sure we're covering our bases on, 'cause we had a unanimous consent for the new ELA curriculum. Given the dollar figure of $373,209, does that require a roll call, or are we okay with unanimous consent on hand vote?
No, it's probably good. I mean,
I just want to make sure we're covering our bases in that respect.
I think it would not be a bad idea to do a roll call.
Because I wasn't sure if there's an actual dollar limit, but in
Yeah, I
an
don't
excessive
know.
amount.
I think a lot of boards, and I believe this is Robert's rules, if a board member requests a roll call,
Then we can do it.
then you do a roll call.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's not necessarily required.
I think
I mean,
that
by our-
not for motions, I don't think for motions.
It's certainly unanimous vote, so I'm not, just want to make sure, if
Yeah.
there was ever question that we're covering our bases, that's all.
Because that is a lot of money.
It is a fair amount of money, yes.
Yeah, change.
Would you like to do a roll call on that?
I'm not formally requesting it, if we're comfortable with it, we're good. If
Well,
we-
I think just
I think with
because,
it being unanimous.
Very good,
okay,
okay, thank you.
but you
I'll
thank
make,
you,
I'll make a note in the minutes.
but thank you, and I'll be more, usually when we do have a high dollar amount, I do just do a roll call, so I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. I'll be more careful next time. Up next, consideration of custodial supplies bid. Have. We heard from Kurt last week on these items, the bid tabula, got the memo here. From
A variety of
Yeah,
products.
all sorts of batteries and,
I move to accept the custodial bids as highlighted and presented to the board.
And I support that.
okay, any further conversation on this recommendation to approve the highlighted custodial supplies under the listed vendors on the bid tabulation sheet to be approved for purchase until June 30th, 2024. We have a motion and support. Any conversation? Okay, hearing none. Show of hands?
Okay.
Okay, unanimous support, thank you. Next up is the consideration of consumable supplies bid. We also heard about these last week.
I move to approve the highlighted consumable supplies under the listed vendors and the bid tabulation sheet be approved for purchase until June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and support, any conversation? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, show of hands?
Thank you.
Okay, passes unanimously, thank you. Sanborn ceiling replacement bid. Motion to accept the bid from Metal Arts Construction in the amount of $49,482 for Sanborn Elementary ceiling replacement. We also heard about this last week.
I'm not remembering. It says hallways, classrooms, restrooms, gymnasium. I can't remember where it was.
When they got above the ceiling, they couldn't.
But classrooms are hallways. my question.
Hallways.
Just in the, so the north-south corridor.
Right.
The classrooms and the immediate area above the entry door don't need the hall, but not the hall. The hall will remain.
Okay, thank you.
I move to accept the bid from Metal Arts Construction for $49,482 for the Sanborn ceiling replacement.
Okay,
Support.
okay, we have motion and support, any conversation? And just to note, this, I believe, was also the low bid, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, all in favor, show of hands? Okay, unanimous support, thank you. Change event 005, Besser Supply install fire alarm control panel. We would need a motion to pay no more than $13,326.11 to Northern Valley Electrical Services for the Besser Elementary fire alarm control panel work, as was also presented last week at our meeting.
I move to hire North Valley Electrical for the work for $13,326.11 for the change of the fire alarm control panel.
Support?
Okay, thank you.
Just make sure the motion says pay no more than, rather than an exact number?
Yep.
In case it's less.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? Okay, show of hands in support of this motion, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Change event 012, Thunder Bay Junior High Media Center floor infill.
And so this one, we, I think, just wound up, but Kurt has done his usual, well above standard work, put together a photo, and then, Kurt, you want me to do just and then you can correct anything. So I'll do my layman's term. So, we're putting new flooring in the media center at the junior high. That picture there shows you what we're talking about. It drops down in the middle of the junior high to 2 steps down. And we have concerns or questions about why it was designed that way, but it's certainly a potential hazard for anyone speaking and facing the staff with the drop-down area behind them. Steve Genshaw actually came up and said, you can't tell me how many times he almost fell down backwards on that. It kind of restricts our space too, because you lose the space of the steps and all of that. So for a variety of reasons, as well as the quality of installation of the floor over those steps not being up to par, we looked at filling that in.
Well, and it makes the whole room a bit accessible to somebody in a wheelchair or something
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, you see that long ramp on the right-hand side in the picture there. And so,
Yeah, because then they can't go any further.
what's that?
On a wheelchair, they come in on that ramp, right?
Yep.
And then they have the steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
What architect designed that anyways?
We can't really figure out. And then it became, I guess, what's that?
I think THA, I think, were the architects.
Well, I just mean, what was the purpose of ever having that?
A very shallow swimming pool?
I can imagine you'd kind of use it like an amphitheater, the teacher can go down and students can sit and,
I think there were some desktop computers down
well, they put
at
that,
that level. But
yeah, according to the team, they put that in afterwards. That wasn't the original
Okay.
intent.
I remember seeing them there, but I
Yep.
don't know when.
And just to show off my construction knowledge, which I owe completely to Kurt, you can deduce this, and I don't know, because the electricity is through a conduit on the wall. It wasn't built into the wall when they designed it, so. How'd I do? There you go.
Surface mount, yeah.
But, so it actually would make more usable space, and then the installation of the flooring that's already going in will look much better because we're not folding it over, steps. We'll get rid of that railing. It'll just clean the whole area up. And better to do it now while we're doing that work. We're ahead of schedule. So that's the reasoning behind this.
Well, I would move to pay no more than $16,796 to Spence Brothers for the TBJH Media Center floor infill work.
Support.
Any further conversation? Hearing none, show of hands for this motion, please. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, passes unanimously. Human Resources Staff Update.
Just a second. Did the change order from last week for the 150 go away?
The fire suppression?
Yeah.
So we're putting that on hold to work through your questions and
Okay.
others.
I
Yep.
thought we were still having to go through with it
Nope.
tonight. Okay. Excellent.
All right, Samantha.
Good evening. This month, we have 4 new hires. For professional staff, we have Joseph Fulkerson, science teacher, Thunder Bay Junior High. Cynthia Fernandez, special education teacher, Thunder Bay Junior High. James Kilicheski III, special education teacher, Alpena High School. For support staff, we have Courtney Boldry, registrar, Thunder Bay Junior High School. For resignations, we have Amber Rose Rithaller, custodian, Alpena High School. Lucero Spoyar, custodian, Alpena High School. Bradley Crevier, food service aide, Thunder Bay Junior High. Karina Whitlow, instructional assistant, Thunder Bay Junior High. Romeo Ambrose, instructional assistant, Thunder Bay Junior High. Geyer Baylog, instructional assistant, Alpena High School. Olivia Smith, second grade teacher, Lincoln Elementary School. Robert Bear, special education teacher, Alpena High School. For retirements, we have Jan Lamp, food service aide, Thunder Bay Junior High with 32 years of service. And Julie Samp, instructional assistant, library, Alpena High School with 23 years of service. Thank you.
Nice to see a couple of special education teacher hires, and a couple male teachers, always nice, so. We will need a motion to approve the hiring of the new professional staff after completion of proper certification, testing, and other HR requirements.
So moved.
Support.
Any further conversation? Okay, hearing none, show of hands, please.
In support, I
In
assume?
support, yes,
Okay.
thank you. Show of hands in
Should
support.
verify.
Thank you.
Thank you, passes unanimously. Gifts.
Yes, we have our usual wonderful list of gifts from our generous community. Ruth and Dennis Rabo donated a total of $95 over the past 3 months to ACES for the McKinney-Vento Homeless Community Fund to be used for students who are at risk. Michael Mayhaz donated $2,500 for the Mayhaz Family Spartan Scholarship Fund for the 2023 Scholarship Award. Pepsi Bottling Group donated a pallet of pop, water, and Gatorade to Thunder Bay Junior High for the Career Day beverages for students and presenters. HPC Credit Union donated $100 to Thunder Bay Junior High for the Career Day Presenter Breakfast. United Way of Northeast Michigan donated 5 Scoops $10 certificates and 5 $10 McDonald's, I'm assuming certificates, to Thunder Bay Junior High for student rewards. Ice Mountain donated $500 to Alpena High School to recognize the hockey team who won the Ice Runs Deep Challenge. They were named Division II Team of the Year. 3 2Me Balloons donated a balloon circle arch valued at $400 for the senior athletic banquet. Pepsi Bottling Group donated pop water and Gatorade for the Alpena High School senior athletic banquet valued at $300. J.J.'s Catering donated food and water valued at $500 for the Alpena High School Athletics Senior Athletic Banquet. True North Threads donated the embroidery of the Wildcat on a shirt valued at $50, which was given out at the AHS Senior Athletic Banquet. BSN Sports donated a green Nike polo shirt valued at $80, which was given out at the AHS Senior Athletic Banquet. Johnny Zawacki donated $100 worth of various restaurant gift cards to the AHS Athletics program. Molly Benson, financial advisor, purchased Dave Ramsey's finance program online workbooks for Thunder Bay Junior High students in the Food So Fun 2 class. The class of 1992 reunion donated $300 to the AHS baseball, soccer, and track programs. I would recommend, or rather I would move to accept the gifts listed above with gratitude and thank the donors in writing for the generous gifts.
Support.
Any conversation? Hearing none, show of hands in support of the motion, please. Unanimous, thank you. Second opportunity for citizens and delegations to address the board. Okay, seeing no one. Information and proposals, letters and communications. I don't believe we have anything. Okay. Reports and information from the superintendent staff. District-wide fire alarm system update.
All right. Kurt, you want to speak on this at all? No, okay. So, we had a Chromebook incident at Wilson, and in that process, there was a small fire contained quickly. Smoke remained in the classroom. As we debriefed on that, we learned a lot about what our fire alarms, fire systems do and don't do, what's required, what's not required, and those sorts of things. So ultimately, I guess the message first off to our professional staff and our students is if you see smoke and you see fire, pull the fire alarm. We've been taught, never to pull a fire alarm, but we found that, not that we found, but it played out that smoke detectors are not covering every inch of our buildings. And depending on the particular building and how many smoke alarms there are, there may not be coverage down one particular wing of that sort of thing. So we just want to make sure, and we'll be going over this when staff and students return, if you see smoke, if you smell smoke and you're concerned, pull that fire alarm, because it is a fire alarm to notify people that there's a fire in the building. Along those lines, too, we're looking at our fire alarms currently just go off. They don't notify any of the authorities. They don't notify anyone in the district. So we're gathering, we got some estimates. I think we approved where we could put into place a system where when the fire alarm is pulled, it will notify 911, the authorities immediately, and it will also notify via phone call, email to administrators across the district, select groups, so that we're aware that that's been tripped. But we are just taking a fresh look at all of our fire alarms across the district and arming people with information about how they do and do not operate.
Yeah, and the systems that we have are existing, but some of the newer buildings like Lincoln, Thunder Bay, the high school is fully gone through, and in fact, that's a fully automated system. Just, I'm going off the top of my head, don't hold me to it. I think at the high school there's 200 and some detection devices So that's smoke detectors, and some of them are even in ductwork, places like that. Some of our other smaller buildings, there might be 8 detectors. If you were to build a new home, you know, a 3,000-foot square home, 5-bedroom, you're going to be required to have 8 detectors, and that might equal to what some of our elementary buildings are. So again, that's code. It's pretty good coverage in areas. For the most part, everything historically was based on, you know, visual or humans. When humans are in there, that's when they're, you know, the real danger was. So by exits, things like that, you know, exiting the kitchen, exiting the boiler rooms, areas like that, the lunch rooms, there's fire pull stations. And as Dave mentioned, we deal probably, I don't know, a handful of times a year where a student pulls a fire alarm. It's treated as a drill. The students talk to and addressed and things like that. And I think there's just a small fear. There was always the old rumor, you know, a pull station, don't pull, it'll spray ink on you. I remember hearing that when I was in school. They will not do that. There's a glass rod in there. I've heard some tell rumors that rod costs $300 to replace. It doesn't. I got them for free from the fire alarm company. But it's just tactics that have been used to, you know, avoid the accidental pulls from students. So with that, it is perfectly safe, and if there's any doubt, you know, we want to remind everyone to, you can pull that. Worst case, it gets treated as a drill, and we replace a free glass rod and reset it, so.
All right, thank you.
Strategic plan item, goal 5, implement the safe, warm, and dry bond project.
So we have a tremendous amount of work being done. Board Member Fritz joined me last week to tour a site. I encourage any of you, we have a hard hat for you if you don't. You know, it's good to go through and see everything that's being done. And you're welcome to let me know, and we can arrange a tour going through. So far, I think it's going well. There's always hiccups along the way, but I think at all sites we're underway and monitoring everything very closely. So busy summer with a lot of work being done.
The hard hat's real attractive too. It's a fashion statement.
Yes, indeed.
Where did you tour?
Besser.
Okay.
Really got to see all the asbestos and, yeah.
Yep.
Very interesting, and how they actually do the asbestos abatement, all plastic and everything that has to go up, and the little air, the thing that sends, tests the air. Yeah.
Air filtration devices, air sampling.
Air sampling and how it's sent out.
So, you know, there's the NOVA environmental representative right
Yeah.
there with a microscope set up, so they actually have a clicker, you know, it might not, some of their tests might not even be for asbestos, it just might be, you know, they're actually looking at dust particles in the air, counting how many of them are in the air, an acceptable level of any type of dust. All work is being performed. Then they also send out TEM samples periodically, and at the end of that, like, at the end of sections, and those get sent to Ann Arbor to a lab and tested down there.
It was all very interesting.
Mhm. And literally 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. It doesn't have to be a multi-hour visit or anything, so just let me know. Good news. I know, so school is, well, I won't say anything, but we're fully in summer at this point, but the year ended great. But we are really packed with summer school and credit recovery, and that's up and running and going great. Matt Poley's been leading that effort, and I've heard great things so far with that. And then just personally, I was part of the 8th grade celebration at the junior high. I think that was the first time they've done that. Gordon, you were there as well. Really just a neat ceremony to commemorate and wish our 8th graders well. Gaga ball. How many of you are familiar with Gaga ball?
Is it like a Gaga pit?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
Gaga
I played it
pit.
at Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at the
With
junior
my
high
kids.
page, that picture in the lower right-hand corner, it's an octagon frame, and then in the middle, the students play a game, and it is amazing to see they regulate this game themselves. The object is you can use your hands only, and you are trying to hit others' knees and below.
Knees and below.
Yeah.
And then and then they're strategically, like if you can figure out how to bounce it off the wall,
Yeah.
you
With a
know.
ball, I assume, not just.
Yes.
Not bounce.
Left out that key point.
But
With a ball.
I got knocked out
Yeah.
fairly early when I played it with my kids.
But, so they've had this pit up and running at a couple of functions this year, and it's amazing to see. So this was 8th grade. It is filled with boys mostly. I mean, you would think way too many boys starting this game out, but somehow, nobody gets injured. There's few, if any, arguments over whether you're out or not. They really do an amazing job. So that's one of those things I'd love to bottle up and say, if you can do that in this setting, let's see if we can do it in the hallway. Let's see if we can do it in the classroom, because I don't know how it happens, but every time I see them playing, I think, this is going to go south so fast. And it doesn't. They have a blast, and again, they self-regulate. It's really neat to watch, but.
So the bottom of the pit, was it the concrete and then the thing around it?
So,
plywood.
yeah, these are
I mean,
portable.
but the bottom.
Yeah,
You could set it up right here.
yeah.
Oh, okay, because the one in Emmanuel was concrete, and my biggest issue was I had to have knuckles getting
Yeah.
scraped on the concrete,
Oh, I
yeah.
can see that. Yeah, they set it up, it's portable. They
Oh,
put
it's
it in-
portable, okay,
yeah,
this
they-
one's permanent.
They put it
Yeah.
in the gym, so there was the gym floor, and
Oh,
again.
that's neat, that's
to my
great.
knowledge,
I
there
got
were
to
no
help set them
injuries.
up and take them down at the junior high to dance one time. It
Did
was
you?
Pretty
Yeah.
interesting, but it's
Yeah.
cool. They had, I think, 3 of them going at one of their dances, and
Yep.
it went well.
Yeah.
I was very
They
surprised.
come and go as they
Yeah, it's
please,
fun.
and, yeah, so.
Mm-hmm.
But, you'll see a lot of celebrations, field days, things like that to close out the year. So, all in all, it had an excellent, wonderful finish to the school year.
And how was the trip to Colorado with the ROV?
Yeah, so I did. I went with the high school ROV team. Do not call it robotics. I learned that. It's remote operated vehicle. So they actually, the Alpena team, and full disclosure, two of my daughters are on the team. One is an 8th grader and one is a 10th grader. So the team won the regional competition back in May here at NOAA. And from that, they got to go to the World's competition, the MATE ROV World Championship out in Longmont, Colorado. So I went out last Wednesday and spent Thursday, Friday, Saturday, watching remote underwater, or operated vehicles underwater. So it was a really interesting experience. A lot of people really passionate about it, and it's a great network. There's a lot of lessons in patience that are taught, because the team was in the pool for 15 minutes competing out of a 8 to 10 hour day where you're doing all sorts of other things and waiting and doing that. So, but they did well. You ask them how they did, and it's up and down, but they improved each day, and they didn't place in the top 3. We don't have the final standings yet, but they did. They were pleased ultimately with their performance. Things go wrong, they have to fix it right on the spot.
Who runs that club?
Bob Thompson and
Okay.
his wife Katie Thompson. Bob's the mentor, and then I don't know if she's the official co-mentor or not, but she's definitely the mentor in that program. So pretty neat. Teams from all over the world: Egypt, Scotland, and Canada, Brazil, Australia. So great experience to be seeing all that. So.
You finished?
I am finished.
Information and questions from board members.
I have information of last week, the conference I was talking about. June 5th through 7th, I attended the Community Mental Health Association of Michigan annual summer conference. It was held, as it often is, at the Grand Traverse Resort. And if you've never been there, the tower rooms are really nice. they're A-okay. But what was really great about the conference is, of course, all of the sessions and whatnot. Now, anyone can attend this conference if you're interested in mental health issues. And I would actually recommend it because there are some that are very, very specific. In fact, people get social work credit for it and that sort of thing. And then there are some that are really broad. There are some that are just for board members, but there's a lot that would be of interest to the general public or people just interested in mental health. I did send Dave some links to some of the information, like the slideshows from the sessions, and I thought he could send that on to Justin if you all, would love to discuss those and things. I thought on the strength of our mental health, what do we call it, roundtable, I guess?
Panel discussion.
The panel discussion. I thought that it would be very good to continue those kinds of connections. So some of the topics, just if you're curious, there was one, there are always really good keynote sessions. So one of the big subjects was Michigan's approach to enhancing children's behavioral health services. Part of this comes from a lawsuit, it's called the KB lawsuit, in which it was determined that Michigan was not doing an adequate job of providing mental health services to a certain category of youth. So in a sense, a wheel came off a little bit. But, of course, one of the things about the state of Michigan, which is kind of interesting, is rather than just put the wheel back on or fit a better wheel, they replaced all of the wheels, put on different kinds of wheels, they changed the axles, and then they upgraded the air conditioning system, replaced the transmission with a completely different model, and then just to top it all off, they painted the car. They just went million miles farther than they really had to with this thing, and I guess time will tell whether that was wise or it was a knee-jerk reaction. Who knows? But there were a lot of interesting things that are coming out about this. One of the things, of course, just my own personal experience being on the board, the Northern Michigan regional entity. There are many people who are very frustrated right now with DHHS because there are certain things they don't know about their own mental health system, and the people they regulate are constantly having to say to them, well, you really want us to place these kids, in foster homes, but legally we can't do that. Oh, so you weren't just being difficult. No, your own rules preclude us from doing that. So these kinds of, I don't know, I would use a word, but I'm not going to. It's frustrating for the people who are regulated by such an agency, which doesn't know its own functions and its parameters. Anyway, so we'll see how this all goes. But the sessions were really, really interesting. One was on building bridges, creating a sustainable pipeline for recruitment and retention. That would be interesting to anybody who's having issues with recruitment and retention in any field. Reigniting local partnerships for community-based care for youth and families. Another session was what we wish we didn't know about cannabis, including one of the people who went to that session said that it was really quite interesting to learn that if you have cannabis, it can be stored in body fat, and then when you exercise and burn that fat, you can get high again or something crazy like that. I mean, all kinds of stuff. What we wish we didn't know about cannabis. Another one was quick to listen, slow to speak, restructuring the typical DEI approach. One I thought was really very interesting was called Mental Health Matters from the Community to the Classroom. And there was Medicaid funding sessions. There was just so many things. There was one school, I believe that was the one up in the UP, Brighting Township. It was called Positively Impacting Students' Mental Health, a collaborative approach between CMH and public schools, where they actually have CMH coming in and delivering services on school property. So that was all very interesting. So anyway, that was, in a nutshell, that was what we did. One of the other subjects, though, of the conference was really, really interesting. Again, I think there's a sort of knee-jerk reaction to all of a sudden start funneling all this money to schools and mental health. And the people in mental health are a little frustrated in a way because they say, well, you guys are doing like a lot of interventions and we do treatment. please don't take all our money. So I think, that really is a real thing that's going to happen. And maybe that underscores the importance of the discussions we're having, because they're going to start coming to us, at the schools and saying, hey, we know how to do this thing. Can we work together? And you guys have all this money now. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how we go forward together with this, but I do hope that we find opportunities to collaborate with other agencies and really make the most out of this funding that's coming our way, which I'm sure we'll use very responsibly, but I think there are opportunities. So that was my information, and then my question was, this, I wasn't going to say anything about this, but quite a few people came and asked me about this, and it was observed that we recognize our top student athletes when they reach the pinnacle of their contest or whatever, but we don't necessarily do the same thing with those who have achieved a great deal academically. We have our top 10%, but people kept asking me, why haven't I heard about who's the valedictorian, salutatorian? So I just thought I'd ask, is that by design? Is that something that has just slipped through the cracks? I was just curious. And now that graduation's over, I can ask this question without it seeming self-serving.
Sure. I'd have to look back to the history of that, because that was already in place when I got here, not having the valedictorian, salutatorian, those kind of things. So.
Yeah. Well, I think, sometimes there's that drive for achievement. I think, sometimes a little healthy competition. I mean, for example, in my daughter's cohort, I know most of those kids, and I know for them, that chase, that excitement of chasing that goal is very positive. And I think that our academic climate, as we nurture those kids towards those goals, I think it's been very positive, and I've been really thrilled to see the development of many of those kids. So, but I don't think it would hurt necessarily. But that's just, I was really more a question than a comment, because I just heard it from so many people who asked me. I thought, well,
it's a good question, because I've wondered that too. But it's interesting because I've had a couple of conversations with a board member and some staff at Okemos Public Schools recently, and they've gone like the total opposite, where they've taken away weighted grades, class rank, because the amount of competition and stress that it was putting on that group of kids, that they've done away with all of it. So not only is there not, I think they still obviously might know who the valedictorian is, but they also say, we have so many kids, and it's probably not the same here, so many kids that are 4-point, that how do you end up deciphering who your valedictorian and salutatorian are when you don't do weighted grades, but they are just it's almost opposite, where there was so much competition and so cutthroat and stress-inducing that they've gone the other way. But I've often wondered that here. They know, because it shows on Parent View what your class rank is, so the kids have the ability to look at what their class rank is, and so we obviously track it. But I've wondered that over the past few years when we go to graduation ceremonies, you've got your class speakers and you know who your top 10% are, but other than the dinner that we were at, there was really no recognition of the top 2 or whatever. When I grew up, that's how it was. But
well, Lizzie was very glad that there was no valedictorian speech, because not everybody wants to give that speech. Although, the case for making that individual do it anyway, I think, is a very strong one. You've achieved a lot. Now here's another challenge. Maybe you don't want it, but it's yours. But that the business in Okemos, I can easily understand that. It can be very. It can be very intense, and a lot of that, of course, we have to acknowledge, comes from parents, in those environments, and the kids are sort of I don't know what to do. When I graduated from Lansing Sexton, I was one of 12. Because we didn't have weighted grades. But I went to school with some very distinguished young people. One who became a nuclear power officer on a submarine, another one went back and helped rebuild the country of Lithuania as an engineer. Very interesting people. So again, I think as far as the kids are concerned, they're probably okay with it, whatever we do, because you get all that good camaraderie that becomes. It's like, in a sense, like a sport. I guess that's why I got equating it in my mind. I thought, well, they're really like participating in this competitive activity, which really can be very, very positive, and they stimulate each other. But why don't we acknowledge it? But anyway, I'll stop talking. It's just interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Is that conference, to kind of go back a little bit, is it always in Traverse City? Is that always the annual conference? or is
It seems like 2 out of 3 or 4 a year seem to be in Traverse City lately. I think everybody's decided they like that venue, and it's a nice place. But sometimes they've been downstate. I think there's always one that's down in the Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo area. But they're very informative, very interesting. I don't believe they're that expensive.
Do they have the date for the next one?
Or if you get it, can you share?
Yeah, absolutely, I can.
What is the name of the organization? I missed
It's
that.
the Community Mental Health Association of Michigan. Golly, I'm almost positive that they do have the next one out. Yeah, I can share that with you when that will be. It's also on their website. If you go to cmham.org, cmham.org, they'll have events, upcoming events and things like that. I believe the next one is in the fall. It might be October 23rd. Now, I'm probably not going to be able to get my calendar to come up quickly enough. But I would say take a look at that. And October 23rd sticks in my mind, but it is in Traverse City again. So, yep.
Interesting. Anything else from the board? Hearing nothing else. Next up on the agenda, we will be moving into a closed session for negotiations. And for those of you waiting around, when we return from open session, we will be acting on that and then moving into another closed session. So we will need a motion to meet in closed session under Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act to hear a report on local teacher negotiations and information on the process.
So moved.
Support. This is a roll call?
This is
not, okay. All right, show of hands in support of this closed session, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for this one, I think we're going to have people exit, because we'll be meeting at the table here.
Okay.
And then we can let you know when the closed session is over.
You know how to turn off all the...
Oh, no, how do I?
I think you hit that button.
It's a clean air thing, and it's going to